Okay, so we're going to go over making GraphQL calls using Python. I'm on the Shopify documentation website. I'll go ahead and add a link to the description. But down here, you'll see Python, and then you can hit on the GitHub repo. And then down here, you'll see instructions on how to install. We'll be using this library to make all of the calls and handle authentication, but then we'll write the GraphQLs ourselves. So now that you have that library installed, we'll go ahead and open up a text editor. And in the text editor, I have a folder called shop. In here, I have 3 files. I have my creds.json, which here you would just replace this with your own Shopify store ID, which if you don't know is this part here after the /store once you're logged in. And your API token would also go here. And that's all we'll need to handle the authentication. Next, we have a file called queries, and this is where we're going to write the query, and then we're going to import it into our main.py. So we'll write the query, and then we'll import it into main.py and make the call through main.py. All right, now to get started, we're going to import Shopify and JSON. Then we're going to open our credential file. Okay, and now that we have our creds file open, we're going to go ahead and create 3 variables. So we're going to do shop URL is equal to shop creds, and this is shop URL. And this is just coming from our creds file. So here you'll see the shop URL variable, and so that's where you'll have your shop URL. And then we're going to pass through the API token, and there is our API token. So going back here, the next variable that we need to do is API version. And as of this video, the one that's currently supported is 2024-07. And then we need to pass the API token. So API token equals shop creds, and we'll do API token. Okay, now that we have the API token, we need to create a session. So we'll do session equals Shopify dot session, and we're going to pass through our 3 variables. So we'll do shop URL, API version, and API token. And then we need to activate the session, and we do that. We'll type Shopify resource activate session, and we're going to pass through the session. Okay, and so we're ready to make our first call, but before we do that, we're going to need to write our query. So we'll go back to the Python query file, and I'm going to open up the main website. Okay, so now that we're here, in this example, we're going to call the orders endpoint, and we're going to get details back for the orders. And we're going to make that call a few times. And each time we make that call, we're going to review using filters. We're going to review using dates so that you get a better understanding on how to make a GraphQL call. So here I'm under orders, I'm under queries, and then I'm going to do orders. And this endpoint gets me a list of all the orders. And so in this example, we'll get all the orders that were placed yesterday. And you can kind of see here a breakdown on the right side on what a query looks like. So I'm going to go over writing it in Python. Okay, so now that I'm back in my Python file, we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call it query. And then we're going to do triple quotes, and we'll start writing our query. And so through Python, using this library, we just need to start with curly brackets and then call the endpoint, which in our case is orders. Now it does have a required parameter, which is going to be first colon, and we're going to do 1. And so what this does is it says when it gets the orders, give me back the first one. And you can add filters to determine where that first order is, right? So you can say, give me the first order that was placed after midnight yesterday. But we'll revisit on how to use filters and how to filter by date ranges. For now, we're going to focus on making the first call. So first one, we want to get the first order. And then we're going to do curly brackets again. And this time, if I open the documentation, we've passed first already. And then we're going to create an edge, right? So if we click show fields, you'll see a node. So we want to create edges and then a node. So here we will do edges and then curly brackets. And then we'll do node and then curly brackets. And everything that's nested inside of node is going to be relevant to one order. So if you can think of this, we're calling the orders endpoint, and each node represents a specific order, right? So if there's 10 orders or if there's 100 orders, we would end up with 100 nodes. And you can think of a node as a row of data, and it'll start to make a little more sense if it's not clear yet. So now that we've created the node, we're going to click on show fields, and these are all the fields that are available from the orders endpoint. So I want to get the date the order was created. Here is created at. So I would just need to add created at. I also want to get the total. I want to get the ID and a few more fields, right? So let's go back to our text editor. And so if I wanted to get created, the date the order was created, it's created at. I also want to get the order ID. I want to get the order name. We'll do any tags. And when we're looking here, it is called total cost or total price set. Where is it? Total price set. So you'll notice that we can't just call total price set because it has this option for fields. So we have to tell it which field to get. And we have the option for presentment money or the option for shop money. So we're going to go with shop money, but then shop money also has fields and it gives us the option for amount or the currency code. And we're going to grab the amount. So I'm going to show you how to write this in GraphQL. So we do that. We're right under tags. We're going to type in the name of the first field, which was total price set. And then we're going to do a curly bracket. And then underneath total price set, we're going to do shop money. And then curly bracket. And then we're going to get the amount. And so that's how we would get the amount, right? So everything inside of this node, everything that's indented is going to be a row of data. So now I'm going to save this. And I'm going to go to my main.py. And from the top, I'm going to import. Sorry, I'm going to do from queries import query. And now I can make my first API call. So I'm just going to call this result is equal to Shopify.GraphQL and then execute, and we'll pass through the query. Now I know that the response is going to be in JSON. So I'm going to just turn that into a dictionary. So result equals JSON loads, and we'll pass through the result. And now it'll be a Python dictionary as opposed to just the JSON format. And if I do print result, it should give me back a response. And so here you can see it gave me back data, orders, there's the node, the data was created, but it's not very legible. So I'm going to import another library to make it a little easier to read. So I'm going to go from pprint, import pprint. And all this does is it structures it so that it's easier to read. So instead of doing print result, we're going to do pprint result. We'll save that and then we'll run it again. And now you can see here there's two takeaways. One is you can see that in the data we have the orders, we have the edges, and then we have a node. So if we had multiple orders, we would have multiple nodes. And then you can parse out the date, the ID, the name the same way that you would with any other Python dictionary. The second thing I want you to look at here is the cost. Now there's no cost to have an API or to make an API call. You don't have to pay for the calls. But you do have a quota. And so here, this query cost me 3. And I currently have 1900 available left with the maximum available of 2000, but it does restore at 100 per second. So I'm not going to run into any problems at all. And if you do scale to the point where this becomes an issue, there is workarounds so that you don't hit any limits or have any errors. For now, we're going to ignore the cost. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to create a new variable. And let me delete this here. And I'm going to call this orders equals result, and then we'll do data, and then we will do orders, and then we're going to do edges. And this way, when we get a response, we're only getting back the orders and we're not getting back the additional data on cost. So if I run this in Python, you'll see we just got this the one node. But to demonstrate what happens if we have multiple nodes, I'm going to say, get me the first 10 results. So now this is going to get me the first 10 orders. And I'm going to run this file again. And here you can see it's giving me back the 3 orders. And so that's how you make a very basic GraphQL call. And now let's take a look at getting customer information as well. And I'm going to hide that there. And so I'm going to scroll up until I find customer. And you can see here customer is an object. So we'll click show fields. And these are all the fields that are available for the customer. So I have, I want the customer ID, I want the customer name, I want the customer email. And if there's any other fields that you want, you can come find them here. Phone is available as well. State, if you did want to get back address information. And so when we're back in our query, right after total price set, we're going to find where this curly bracket closes, which is right here. So I'm just going to type in enter because we still want this in the same row. And I'm going to type in customer curly bracket. And then I'm going to say what fields I want from the customer. So in this case, I want the customer ID. I want the customer's first name, customer's last name, email, and any tags associated with the customer. So now I'm going to save this here. I'm going to change this back to 1. And I'm going to run this file here. And you can see now here's still the node. The date that was created, but now it has this customer. And within customer, it has a dictionary with the customer email, customer name, ID, tags, etc. And then you have the rest of the order details here. So what I want to show you is that it doesn't always have a customer, right? So if you're using point of sale, you might not have a customer logged in. If you're creating orders yourself through Shopify, you might not associate them with the customer. So the customer object might be blank sometimes. And so let me show you this here. Let me run this again in Python. So now I'm telling it to get me all the orders. And you can see here, there's customer, here's my node, here's my customer, but it's coming back as none. And that's because this order didn't have a customer associated with it. So when you're building your application, just keep in mind that sometimes some of these values, depending on the value, if the value is optional, it might come back as none. All right, so let me close out of this here. Okay, and so now that we've gone over how to make a call, how to get customer details, let's go over using filters, right? So if we go back to the documentation and we scroll to the very top, you'll see here that it has an option for a query and then it has filters. So these are all the available filters when we make a query. So in my case, I just want to get the created at date. And so here we would use the created at filter to filter based on date. Okay, so here we're just going to change some formatting to our first line here. So I'm going to bring down this to its own line. And then I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to type in query and then colon and then quote marks. And so then we'll put our query inside of the quote marks. And for the created at date, we're just going to type in created at underscore created at colon, and then we're going to do greater than or equal to 2025-01-01. So I'm just saying get me all the orders that were placed after January 1st. So if I save this here and I changed I just wanted to get me the first one. During testing, I always like to just look at one result. So if I run this file now in Python, you can see it gives me back the results. And so what this lets you do is it's pulling all the orders that were after January 1st. But what if I wanted a date range, right? If I only wanted all the orders from January 1st through the 31st, you can pass more than one filter. All right, so I'm going to show you here is we're going to go to 2025 and we're going to unwrap this date here in single quote marks. And then we're going to do an and using the and statement lets us use more than one filter. So here we're using created at, which is filter number 1. And we're going to do created at again as filter number 2. And this time it's going to be less than or equal to 2025-01-31 because it goes year, month, date. And then we also have to enclose the date in single quote marks. So now when we save this here, I'm going to change this to 10 orders. I'm going to say run this file in Python. And it gets me all the orders for January. And so that's how you would use dates and filters with the GraphQL call. And it doesn't have to be created at, right? Like this can also be on fulfillment status or payment status, right? You can see all the different options that you have on being able to filter. So it doesn't only filter on date. There's different ways to see fulfillment status, unshipped, shipped. If you wanted to look at refunded or processed, you're able to take a look at those orders as well. Yeah.